I attended my son's wedding, and when the bride's father saw me, he quickly turned away as if he had seen a ghost. My name is Eleanor. I have dedicated my entire life to raising and protecting my only son, Edward. I thought that when he found happiness, my duty would be complete. But on the day he married Catherine Beaumont, the daughter of a powerful family, I realized that a mother's true battle had only just begun. From the first time Edward introduced Catherine to me, I had a feeling of unease. She was too perfect, too poised, as if every word, every gesture was calculated. When Edward spoke of his work as an architect, Catherine's eyes lit up with admiration. When I spoke of my difficult days, she listened attentively. Edward was completely captivated. As for me, I saw a performance. That feeling grew stronger during the months leading up to the wedding. Once, when we were tasting wedding cakes, Catherine sweetly told Edward, "Let's choose whichever cake Mother likes, darling." But when Edward turned away to answer a phone call, I caught her eye quickly darting towards me, a sharp, calculating glance, before she immediately turned and whispered to the baker, pointing to the most expensive cake. Her family didn't make me feel any better. Lady Beaumont, Catherine's mother, always smiled at me perfectly, but her eyes did not. They swept over my attire, my way of speaking, and I could clearly feel the unspoken judgment. To them, I was merely a self-made woman with no aristocratic lineage. I felt put in my place from the very beginning. I wanted to warn my son many times. "Edward," I would say, "are you sure about Catherine? I feel—" But he would just smile, a happy smile. "You're being suspicious again, Mother," he'd say. "She's the most wonderful woman I've ever met." How could I shatter the happiness sparkling in my son's eyes with just vague premonitions? So, I chose to remain silent. I hoped that, for my son's happiness, I was wrong. Edward's wedding took place in an ancient church, a symbol of old wealth and power. I arrived early, choosing a seat in the last pew, where I could observe everyone without being noticed. From here, I was just a faint shadow. The Beaumont family occupied the front rows, sitting upright, powerful and distant. I felt excluded from my own son's momentous day, a strangely isolated feeling, just like the day I stood alone at my husband's grave. And then, I saw him, my son, Edward, waiting at the altar. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking very distinguished. He was talking to a friend, a radiant smile on his face. He's truly grown up, I thought, a feeling both proud and bittersweet. He has his own world now, a world where Mother is no longer the center. The organ music swelled, and the grand church doors opened. Catherine appeared, hand in hand with her father, Lord Beaumont. She was beautiful, captivating in her pristine white wedding gown. The entire church seemed to hold its breath at her splendor. But as she drew closer, as she passed my pew, her eyes briefly flickered towards me, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it. A cold, calculating glance, almost a warning, before she smiled sweetly again at Edward, who was waiting at the altar. A shiver ran down my spine. My gaze unintentionally swept past the bride's father, and for a moment my eyes and Lord Beaumont's met. I saw him startle, a fleeting recognition in his eyes. He quickly turned away, his face unusually flustered. The past I had tried to bury for 30 years suddenly came alive right in that man's eyes. Sitting in the front row, Lady Beaumont did not miss that moment. She turned, staring at me, without a smile, her eyes scrutinizing as if assessing a threat. My long-simmering suspicions suddenly flared, strong and clear. Catherine's glance, Lord Beaumont's unease, Lady Beaumont's hostility. None of it was a coincidence. I knew for certain that this wedding was not as simple as it seemed. Something was happening, something connected to my past, and my son was right in the middle of that storm. After the ceremony, all the guests moved to the magnificent Beaumont estate for the reception. I followed the crowd, feeling increasingly out of place. The gentle classical music, the clinking champagne glasses, all belonged to an unfamiliar world. I found a quiet corner by a window, but the attention I wished to avoid found me anyway. Catherine, hand in hand with Edward, approached me. "Mother," she said, her voice sweet, "why are you standing here alone? Are you having fun?" She took my hand, a gesture full of affection, but her hand was cold. When she turned away to speak with Edward, I caught a glimpse of her smile vanishing, replaced by a cold, emotionless expression. The mask was only worn when there was an audience. The party lasted late into the evening. As the guests gradually departed, I saw Catherine standing alone on the balcony. I walked closer. "Catherine," I said softly, "I think I should go. I wish you both happiness." She turned. Under the moonlight, the sweet smile was gone. "Are you in such a hurry to leave, madam?" she said. Her tone completely changed. I was stunned. "You know," she continued, stepping closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper, "Edward is a wonderful man. He has a brilliant future, and from now on he won't need anything but me." She paused, looking directly into my eyes. "Anyone," she emphasized, "or anything from the past that tries to enter his life, I will eliminate." I stood speechless, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I knew my battle was not just with the past, it was also with the present. As I was leaving, a voice stopped me. "Eleanor, can we talk for a moment?" It was Lord Beaumont. He led me into the library and closed the door. The unease was gone, replaced by weariness and regret. "I knew it was you," he said, his voice low. "As soon as I saw you in the church." "That was a long time ago, Arthur," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Long, but not forgotten," he said. I want you to know that I've had many regrets. I was too weak. I left you alone to face everything, just because of family pressure." His eyes were full of remorse. "I'm sorry." "It's too late, Arthur," I said. But I understood. My presence, as Edward's mother, their new son-in-law, had unsettled the entire Beaumont family. The past they had tried to bury was at risk of being dug up. And Catherine, their cunning daughter-in-law, was the one tasked with cleaning it up. After I got the information from James, I knew I couldn't remain silent any longer. I arranged to meet Catherine at a luxurious tea room at the Ritz Hotel. She arrived, still perfectly composed, a sweet smile on her lips. But when I placed the photos James had taken on the table, that smile vanished. "What are these, Catherine?" I asked, my voice calm. She looked at the photos, then up at me, not a hint of embarrassment. She gave a faint, contemptuous smile. "Do you think Edward will believe you?" she challenged. "An old, suspicious mother, or a young wife he loves dearly?" She leaned forward, her voice a venomous whisper. "Who do you think you are to judge me? A woman who has lived her entire life in lies, who has hidden from her own son his true origins. You have no right, Eleanor." I was stunned. She knew my secret. The confrontation didn't end there. A few days later, Lady Beaumont actively sought me out. She didn't mince words. We sat opposite each other in the hotel lobby. No teacups, only hostility. "I know who you are, Eleanor," she said, her voice icy. "And I know who Edward is. But he married my daughter. He is a part of the Beaumont family. Don't think you can use the past to pull him away from here." She paused, looking at me with a warning glare. "This marriage is a perfect arrangement for both families, and I will not let someone like you ruin it." And that's when I understood. This wasn't just Catherine's conspiracy alone. Lady Beaumont was also involved. They didn't care about Edward's happiness. They just wanted to turn him into a pawn in this power marriage, to solidify their status and hide their family's secrets. My son was trapped between two ruthless women. I knew my words wouldn't carry enough weight. I needed undeniable evidence. James worked tirelessly, and finally, he got it. He came to me, carrying a file. Inside were not just photos of Catherine being intimate with her lover. James had also found old gambling debt papers, and most importantly, an audio recording. It was a recording of a conversation between Catherine and her ex-lover, in which she was negotiating a sum of money to keep silent about the past. That evening, I went to see Edward. I didn't say much. I just placed the file on the table in front of him. He opened it. I saw his expression change from curiosity to confusion, then to shock and hurt as he listened to the recording. But then something I didn't expect happened. After the initial shock, he looked up at me, and in his eyes was not gratitude. It was anger. "What are you doing, mother?" he roared, his voice trembling. "Are you trying to destroy my happiness? You never liked her. You're just trying every way to break us apart." The pain was like a knife stabbing my heart. My own son, the one I was trying to protect, turned against me. That very evening he went home and confronted Catherine. Just as I predicted, she put on a perfect act. She cried, admitting past mistakes, but justifying it all as being due to pressure, fear of losing him, wanting a full life to be worthy of him. Edward, with his kind heart, almost softened. He almost believed those crocodile tears. But just then, James appeared. He had anticipated this. James said nothing, just placed another file on the table. This time, it was evidence that Catherine had used Edward's money to pay off her lover, and a contract she had signed, promising to share a portion of the marital assets with him after the marriage. Catherine was speechless. All her lies became meaningless. Her perfect mask finally disintegrated, revealing a naked face of greed and deceit. After Catherine's true colours were exposed, the Beaumont mansion fell into a heavy silence. I met her one last time, in the same luxurious tea room where I had once confronted her. This time, there was no challenge in her eyes, only defeat. I didn't say much. I just placed a signed cheque on the table. £5 million, I said, my voice calm. This amount is enough for you to start a new life anywhere. Enough for you to pay off all your debts and live lavishly for a long time. In return, you must sign the annulment papers and disappear from Edward's life. Forever. She stared at the cheque, her lips tightly pressed. Greed and hatred warred in her eyes. She knew this was her only way out, an exit bought with money. She took the cheque, but before leaving, she leaned close to me, her voice hissing like a snake. Do you think you've won? One day, when Edward is lonely, he will remember me, and he will hate you for taking away his only love. I did not answer. I just sat there, watching her turn and walk away, her once proud figure now looking pathetic. A few days later, Lord Beaumont sought me out again, this time in a quiet park. He looked 10 years older. Eleanor, he said, his voice full of regret. I know everything about Catherine. The girl, she's just like her mother. I'm truly sorry for everything, for our past, and for the present. He looked at me, his eyes holding a fragile hope. Let me make amends. We could. I looked at him, the man I had once loved, the man who had abandoned me for status. What I need now is not your amends, Arthur, I gently interrupted. The past is over. What I need is for my son to be free, to escape the spiral of lies that your own family created, and only I can do that. Finally, Edward had to face the truth. I saw him sitting alone in the empty living room of his temporary apartment, quietly signing the annulment papers. The play had truly ended. Around him were cardboard boxes, ready for a move, a new beginning. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I was blind, Mother. I didn't believe you. I walked over, placing a hand on his shoulder, not letting him finish the sentence. It's all right, son. It's all over now. He stood up, hugging me tightly, like a child seeking a safe refuge. But at least, he whispered, his voice broken, I still have you, Mother. In that moment I knew that all my sacrifices, all the pain I had endured were worth it. I had saved my son. That night, I looked out the window and saw a taxi parked in the distance. Catherine, alone, dragging her designer suitcase, hurried out of the Beaumont mansion. Under the faint streetlights, I glimpsed her turning back to look at the house one last time. Her eyes no longer held fear, but burned with a cold fire of hatred. I knew this was not the end. A wounded beast always returns. But that was a story for another day. The next morning, I woke early. I went out onto the porch, breathing in the fresh morning air. The eastern sky was blushing pink, signaling a new day about to begin. The storm had truly passed. Edward was still sleeping in his room. He needed time to heal his heart. But I knew he would be all right. I stood there, watching the sunrise slowly climb higher, painting a corner of the sky gold. A deep sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time spread within me. The battle was over. I had faced the ghosts of the past, had fought the monsters of the present. But in the end, I had won. I told myself, I kept what was most important. Not fleeting fame, not money, but my son's heart. A heart, though wounded, still knew how to trust. And that was the most precious legacy. A year later, our home was no longer filled with the silence of sorrow. It was filled with laughter and the joyful barking of a retriever Edward had recently adopted. Edward had overcome the shock. He had sold his lavish London apartment and returned to live with me. He no longer pursued massive architectural projects. Instead, he opened a small design studio, specializing in restoring old houses in the area. He said he wanted to create structures with soul, with stories. James, his loyal friend, often came over for dinner. Occasionally, Lord Beaumont would call to check in. Brief, awkward calls, but a start. And then, there was Sarah. She was a local history teacher, a gentle, intelligent woman with a warm smile. They met when Edward was researching the history of an old farmhouse. Their love came naturally, without calculation, without performances. One afternoon, Edward, Sarah, and I sat together on the porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset. He had just shown me the design for a small house he was dreaming up. "What do you think, Mother?" he asked, his eyes a little nervous. "It's beautiful, son," I smiled. He was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Mother, I've thought a lot. I know about your past, and Father's. I don't blame you." I looked at him, surprised. "You did what you had to do to protect me," he continued, gently taking Sarah's hand. "And I will never forget that." "Thank you, Mother." I took his hand. "Thank you too, Edward, for giving me a second chance." Sarah smiled at me, a genuine smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Eleanor," she said, "for raising such a wonderful man." We sat there, in peaceful silence, watching the sun slowly set. The past was still there. The scars would never fully heal, but we had learned to live with it. And we had a future built on truth, forgiveness, and a heart that had learned to trust and love again. 211 seconds. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn. Enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat.